All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, most important topics in all of AP World history, the Industrial Revolution. Seriously, this thing comes up everywhere. So today, we're not just going to memorize a bunch of dates and names, nope. We are cracking open the exact blueprint for how to ace the essay portion of the exam.
So let's start with the big question. And I want you to know this isn't some hypothetical I made up. This is a real long essay question straight from the College Board. Now pay close attention to that little phrase, evaluates the extent to which. That's key. They're not asking you if things changed, they're asking how much they changed and in what ways. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, just let that sink in for a second. This is the real deal. This is exactly the kind of thing you could be staring at on test day. And knowing how to answer this is what separates a decent score from a fantastic one. And look, it's totally normal to feel a little intimidated. I mean, you've got this massive time period, the entire globe to think about, and you have to build a compelling argument from scratch. So where do you even begin?
That's where we come in. That pressure is a good thing because it means you're ready to tackle it. Today, we're not just studying history, we are decoding the test itself. We're going to build the perfect essay piece by piece using the official scoring rules as our guide.
First things first, before you can even start talking about how much something changed, you have to paint a picture of what the world was like before the change, right? That's the very first point you want to grab, and it has a name, contextualization.
The official rubric just says it's about describing a broader historical context. But I want you to think of it like the previously on at the beginning of your favorite TV show. You're just setting the scene for the main action, showing the person grading your essay that you get the big picture.
So, what does that actually look like? Well, you've got options. You could talk about the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment and how they created this new mindset of innovation and questioning old traditions. Or you could focus on European imperialism and how that created the money and the markets that an industrial economy desperately needed. Any of these work perfectly to set the stage for the massive changes about to happen.
Okay, you've set the stage. Now it's time to build the foundation for your entire essay. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this is the single most important sentence you're going to write. I'm talking about your thesis statement. Now check out the difference here. On the left, you have a weak claim, something like industrialization contributed to changes. See how that's just rephrasing the prompt? That gets you exactly 0 points. A strong thesis, on the other hand, makes a real argument. It tells us how and why. Look at the examples on the right. They talk about the shift from farms to factories, how families changed, how people moved. That's a roadmap for an essay.
Okay, you've set the stage and you've made your claim. What's next? Well, now you've got to prove it. This is where you zoom in from the big, broad context to the nitty-gritty details that make your argument come alive. This is your evidence.
And what kind of evidence are we looking for? Specificity is everything. Don't just say, new machines. Name the steam engine. Don't just say, cities got bigger. Talk about the very real problems of pollution and overcrowding. And instead of new ideas, you can bring up capitalism, which fueled the whole thing, and socialism, which grew out of a powerful reaction against it. The more specific, the better.
And these images right here show exactly what I'm talking about. On the left, you see the factory system itself, the new way of organizing work, often with child labor. On the right, the railroads, a brand new technology that literally changed time and space. These aren't just vague ideas, they're concrete, historical facts you can use to build your case.
And here is how you use that evidence. This sentence is pretty much perfect. It doesn't just list facts, it connects them in a logical chain of cause and effect. See that flow? Industrialization leads to urbanization, which leads to bad conditions, which in turn leads to the rise of socialism. That's how you support an argument.
All right, we're on to the final piece of our blueprint. To really hit those top scores, you have to remember the world part of AP World History. It's not enough to just talk about what happened in Britain. You need to show how this whole industrialization thing spread across the globe and how different places responded.
And the key thing to get is that the spread was really uneven. It kicked off in Great Britain, then moved to its neighbors in Western Europe, but then you get places like Russia and Japan, where you see a totally different model. We call it state-sponsored industrialization. That's when the government itself is the one pushing for change, usually because they're trying to catch up with the West. Let's dig into Japan because it's a fantastic case study.
You know, not every country just rolled out the red carpet for factories and railroads. For some, embracing industrialization felt a lot like giving up their own unique culture. And nobody illustrates this dilemma better than Japan.
For centuries, Japan was famous for being isolationist. They went to great lengths to keep Western influence out and protect their way of life.
So when the industrial powers of the West came knocking, Japan's initial response was a very firm, "No thanks, we're good."
But then everything changed in 1853 when the U.S. Navy basically forced Japan to open its ports to trade. This was a huge shock, and Japan's leaders made an incredibly smart move. They realized that the only way to resist the West was to become more like the West, at least industrially. This kicked off the Meiji Restoration, a super-fast, government-led push to modernize. The goal wasn't just to copy the West, it was to build enough strength to protect what made Japan, Japan.
So, we've walked through the whole blueprint, right? Context, thesis, evidence, and a global view. Now let's boil it all down to the one single idea you absolutely need to walk away with.
The entire story of this era, everything we've talked about, really comes down to two powerful, competing forces. They are two sides of the very same coin.
On one side, you have incredible, mind-boggling progress. We're talking steam engines, railroads, new medicines, and levels of wealth the world had never seen before. But on the other side, you have deep, brutal inequality, awful working conditions, child labor, dirty cities, and this growing gap between the industrial countries and the rest of the world.
And that, right there, is the secret. This isn't just a tip for this one essay. This is the central conflict of the entire time period. If you can analyze every document, every question, through this double lens of progress and inequality, you're not just spitting back facts anymore. You're starting to think like a real historian. Master that, and you'll be ready for whatever the exam decides to throw at you.